I don't believe that there's anything we do that's by chance. I truly believe that everything we're here to work on, accomplish, we've already connected with our spiritual helpers. We've already got the game, so to speak, going, and now we've got to play it out. So here I am with Tom today. Hey, Tom.
Good morning.
Are you ready to play Game On?
Good afternoon and good night.
Wherever you're at, good.
Hit me all of a sudden. You never know when this podcast will be.
I know, right? Are you ready? Are you ready to play the game, Tom?
It's a game. I'm in it.
Yeah. So this subject came up into mind recently, and I always like to kind of interact and kind of, think about what I'm going through and what other people I'm seeing go through also. And, I've noticed through most of my life that people have a problem and issues being in the game of life. And so for myself, I've really recognized, especially over the last few years, or I should say, actually, you know what? I say a few years, but it's been 20 years almost since I started this path.
Oh my God.
I know. Yeah, you've been at it a lot longer than me, right?
Yeah. A while.
I think I did a post today on Facebook that said that, I came into this work in about 38 when I went to massage therapy school. So I'm almost 57. And Tom was in his early 20s, correct?
Earlier than that.
Earlier than that. So it was quite a few decades ago.
Well, you can say I began searching, early adulthood, and it set me up for my adulthood, and that delving into, spiritual truths and exploring and having this idea of being more spiritually aware, took hold for me back then. And, it's something I've kind of done more of at different times and less of it other times. But, for a long time, it's been pretty full on for me.
Well, I think that's a good thing to mention is that, we all come in at different places. We all explore different places. And so recognizing that where I'm at, where you're at, listener, where Tom's at, we're at where we need to be in this game of life.
Yeah. And some of us need clarification a little earlier. Some of us, it's a different timing and need to get some experience first. So it's all good. There's no race, in terms of growing spiritually, there is no competition. And I always like to say, there's competition here on planet Earth, there's no question about it. But, when it comes to my spiritual awareness and spiritual growth, there's no rush. It's just the natural inclination of the soul nature, our soul of us, really, that we want to expand and grow, and we get a kick out of it, you might say. There's fulfillment there. Yeah,
when you're mentioning about, there's no rush in it, what came to mind is that the part of us that rushes, honestly, is that intellectual part.
That's right. And especially as
feeling.
You pick up a feeling to do something, and it's important that, we work with our sensitivity to get all the facts. Now, that sounds like that's kind of odd. I mean, don't I use my brain to get the facts? Well, you do. You feel you want to do something, and then it's like, okay, in my feelings, the what is this? The when is that? So don't leave out the when, where I want to do that, and why. Make sure that you have all those four components, and take enough time to get that impression. So anyways, it's hard to describe, but with a little practice and a bit of discernment, it becomes easier.
Yeah, well, and I guess also why we're bringing this subject up is because so many people put so much pressure on themselves to be so psychic or to be aware or to be this or be that, when it's like we're actually in the perfect place for what we've come to do. And in this time, I always like to say, in the moment of my timeline.
Yeah, and where the troubles come in is people leave out one of the facts usually. And I find that in business and, the personal social life that we have, that somebody says, hey, I want to do this. And don't leave out the when, or where are we going to do it? And you'll notice that the more that, mark my words, folks that are listening, when troubles occur, notice how many times one of the facts was assumed or was not made clear. And, let's say that, like being a good intuitive, Teresa, you get a lot of, you have a lot of inner leadership, you're a born leader. And as I said to you this morning, like what I notice is you're really in charge of your own life. You get up in the morning, you get a feel for things, and you discern where you want to go with your energy, where you want to put your energy. You're great at that. And but when the rushing comes in, it's just not double checking the timing. There's like, why do I leave out the when? Because for an intuitive, everything is now. And let's get going. The where is a given, wherever they're at. And, why is sometimes clear too, but it's important to know that because the why is really the feelings. So with our facts, the what is the prophetic part, that inner knowing what. The when is the visionary part. Visionaries have a great sense of timing when they're in balance. The where is the intuitive nature, that intuitive part of us. And then the why is the feeling nature.
And if you're wondering about these 4 gifts, we have a class coming up this coming weekend. One of our master classes, our Intuition Now master class, the expansion experience, which is our monthly expansion of one of the gifts. And this gift on this weekend is actually around, or I should say this weekend, March 22nd, 2024. In case this is in the future, we do them every 4 months. You can check out the link below to see what one we're doing the month you're listening to this. But the one coming up is around the gift of our feeling, our empathic abilities. Yeah. And so, like you're saying, Tom, we all get these feelings. And so it's, knowing, okay, so what do I do with all those feelings?
Yeah. And so let's get back to your rushy energy that
do we really want to talk about that?
Shows up from time to time. So, when people put pressure on situations, it's just putting pressure on the timing. And I guess, there's something that you brought up earlier is that, what I relate to is kind of like wanting to discern everything and pick up everything well in advance. And for the visionary, my out of balance tendency is to want to do everything perfect and look good all the time, look perfect at what I'm doing, and that's when I'm out of balance. When I'm in balance, I'm more, forgiving, and, we get it better as we do it, and we continue to, refine whatever we're doing. So, but I sometimes feel pressure, like to know what's going to happen before it happens, even though the timing isn't really right. So we all have, why I bring this up is when we talk about this rushy energy, I got to rush to do this, rush to do that. We have to be aware of it because it really, turns off our feeling nature. It turns off our sensitivity. And so, it's great to pick up things ahead of time, but make sure you know the why. On the other hand, the prophetic nature, when they're out of balance, is they have a tendency to procrastinate on what they're picking up. So they know the what, they know what to do, and then they kind of leave it to the last minute and then put pressure on people. So when you start to understand and relate more to, have a feeling for and relate more to, and get some of the facts on your 4 spiritual gifts, like in our Intuition Now class, it's kind of an unfoldment process. You'll begin to know how you set yourself up for pressure. And, one way we do it is by trying to rush through everything.
Well, I can relate that in a big way because for a long time, I rushed. And a lot of times I couldn't accomplish anything because it was moving from one thing to another. And it was like, oh, I've got all these ideas. And so I'm glad you mentioned that, because as we all move through our game of life, going back to what we first started with, is that, we all intuitively inside know what to do next, but it's when we're not connected with that feeling part of us that we then lose track of, okay, so what do we, like you're saying, all the out of balance areas.
Well, who are we talking about?
Myself.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Because, you don't want to assume that, I don't want to assume that our listeners go through quite the same thing.
Right, of course.
It's, I have my version. Mm-hmm. And so like I shared, I put pressure on wanting to get an impression before it's time, or before things have kind of really morphed in the universe, you might say. That's my sense of it. And that's something I kind of notice, In other words, I tend to put pressure on myself to have the facts before the facts are there. That
Right.
might be a way of me saying it. You might have a different version of rushing based on your intuitive nature and also being your first gift and also, the environment that you were in when you were raised. So it's great that we get to share with each other because when you shared about rushing, this is a good example why we need to share with each other. Then it helped me tune into, okay, now how do I do that? But I can't assume. I don't want to assume that everybody else does it my way,
Right. And I'm really glad that you maybe bring it back to the first person because that is how we are trained. With Tom and I, we've been working with the Way Shores College for, well, Tom, a long time now, me, several years now. And it really is about taking ownership in our own leadership and our own control of how we work through our life and the choices we make and the things we say and the actions we have and bring it back home. So I'm really glad that you brought it back to I, because that's a lot of times what we like to do in our classes too, is really say, okay, so it's not about you, we, they, it's about yourself, myself, I, how do I do it? And like you're saying, which is a big key, is sharing with like-minded people or kindred souls or whatever you want to call those of us who can relate to what we're speaking about and what we're sharing about. It's a great way to then begin to put things together for yourself. And that's a lot of what we're doing about making this practical, because every single person on the planet is a soul in a physical body. We all have heard that many times. When Oprah says it, everybody hears it. And so recognizing that as a soul in a physical body, we all have these inner gifts, inner wisdom, inner abilities, and bringing forth them in the way that is supportive for you by maybe hearing like a podcast like this, or maybe watching something on YouTube or reading a book and something goes bing and you're like, oh my God, like Tom is saying, how do I do it that way? Or what's my version of that?
Yeah, and because we have these subconscious emotions, you might say, or reactions to things, and then I know for me, my spiritual growth is based on becoming more aware of those unconscious buttons that get pushed or triggers. They might say if it's real serious, but the tendencies I have to just short circuit my fulfillment or short circuit my success. So, let's getting back to rushing. Have you ever had a great idea and then you put pressure on yourself or to do it before its timing or below the timing? Again, that's just being out of balance within our intellect and our feelings. So our intellectual nature is that part of us that wants to understand things and know how they work and that kind of thing. And we need it here on planet Earth. We have to, it's our brain basically, and our feeling nature is that part of us that's that sensitivity, that spiritual, bigger picture sensitivity. When those are in balance, things fall into place in the right time. So sometimes, we get impressions, especially if we're in leadership opportunities. I will get impressions, I'll put it in the eye, of what's coming up. But it's important. Society's training is, okay, everything has to be now. Everything has to be, we're in a competitive world. We have to keep moving. We have to outrace the others, with this great idea. And so for me, it's how do I relax with that? Sometimes you do have to move quickly. Be quick or be dead, they say sometimes, and sometimes, it all just depends. But being in leadership, you can pick up these ideas and solutions. And then it's a matter of how do I best work with the people around me to, move the energy in that way.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because it does go back to the people around us, right? So as
Right.
we are growing, expanding, and engaging in this part of us, the spiritual part of us, there may be people around you that are not because they're where they're at. But there's clearly something that magnetized and brought you all together.
Well said.
Even, whether it's your birth family, whether it's a family you married into later, or friends or people you work with, there's a reason why everyone is together at certain moments in time. And so in recognizing and honoring that each person, no matter who you're around, there's a reason why, but also honoring just where they're at. And that's without judging or without pointing fingers or I'll be honest with you, for myself, my previous, family, I was very wanting them to come with me. Like, hey, you guys need to know all this too. And they're like, what? No. And now I recognize how out of balance I was at that time for, like, you're saying rush. And I was rushing to, oh my God, they all got to get on board now because the ship is leaving soon or whatever. Right. I mean, not literally, but just recognizing and honoring those around you. Have you ever noticed that, Tom, in the situations you've had through your life?
Yeah, well, what stimulates me, or what comes to mind when you share, which is, for me, is just recognizing that everybody in my life is there because somehow I've attracted that. I've magnetized that to myself. So the key with spiritual growth for me is being positive about every interaction, being in that loving, true concern, feeling, in that almost mode of operating, pivoting from there. And so that for me, that moves into respecting where everybody's at. And as I tune into the bigger picture that we're all here learning and growing, what I want to get to though is if I'm working with people in business and I have a project that I need to accomplish, and it's business, I mean, we have to do this, then it's important for me to communicate what I need, find out where they're at, and if they don't want to get moving in that direction, well, then we just replace them. That's what a good imbalance intuitive will do. So, but we don't. It's important not to jump to it before I've even communicated, or found out. Anyway, we all have these tendencies, so that it's not always going to be comfortable. Some of our learning experiences are kind of hard hitting, and the reason is that, for me, is that what I found is I've had a concept about how I thought things should go, based on my environment or my first 7 years. And sometimes these concepts, I don't even recognize that I have them. I just think them my whole life. And then later I go, oh, I'm putting pressure on myself with that thought. I'm blowing my timing with that thought. So, this whole idea of self-discovery is there for our convenience. It's for our fulfillment. And life is meant to be more pleasant. We're meant to have more ups and downs and be in our niche. But applaud, every time you've done it not so good, because the next time you can do it better. We grow through experience and involvement. So there's no judging. It's just how much time do I want to spend playing that game, or and in fact, like spiritually, we start putting pressure on our physical body with our state of consciousness, So if somebody's constantly putting pressure on themselves, they'll be putting pressure on other people. And, sometimes these concepts we've been carrying for lifetimes, and sometimes a simple lesson from a lifetime is like a big deal. Like, oh, I'm so sensitive that I read something recently. I was kind of regrouping a past life where I withdrew, I went into self-protective mode, and my guidance was, reminding me of that. And there is a little bit of a tendency there still, if I'm not, now that I'm aware of it, like they reminded me, there's a little tendency for me to withdraw. And so that keeps me out of the right place at the right time. So anyway, but the more that I'm clear about who I am and what I'm picking up, and really love, have that loving feeling that, respect myself, respect that loving feeling myself. But as I do, I respect everyone else.
What a big thing of this, about concepts and about, the first 7 years, and also what we brought in with us. Right.
Yeah.
So I recognize that in myself, because recently, as I'm at work and doing accounting and finance, and there's been some things that I haven't gotten correct because maybe I didn't learn it the right way, or I could connect what was really happening. Because in this field I'm in, which is landscape architecture, is it's I've never done this before, and so it's a whole new ball game. So, but what I recognized recently when I made some errors in some invoicing is I felt it in me, and I felt like, I'm in trouble. Like immediately I had this stimulation from when I was a little kid. And then I went, wait a minute, that's not, I've moved beyond that. Like I recognized it pretty quick in that discernment, ability to discern that, that I can move I'm not in trouble, and I can move out of that feeling pretty quickly than I used to when I didn't understand about some of the concepts that I picked up from my mom or dad or I brought in with me. And so I'm glad you mentioned that, because this again is just making it practical. But of course, this is a whole other layer of of really remembering and reawakening who you are as a spiritual being and recognizing those concepts.
Well, can I offer some light on that?
Yes, please do.
So I have an impression when you said you felt you were in trouble. I wonder if the person that was upset about their invoice not getting out felt they were in trouble.
Oh boy, that is really big, because lately I've noticed as I'm interacting with people.
Why don't you just relax and check with your guidance if that's true or if that's just my opinion?
No, you're spot on.
And
Absolutely.
maybe what percentage of that feeling you were in trouble was yours, and or what percentage were you picking up from someone else?
I'm picking up that was 15% was me and the rest was that person.
So how does that make you feel when you have that perspective?
Well, it makes me feel like, it's that I'm very aware and how sensitive I am to the energy of other people that I'm working with. And for myself, it's really being aware of that, because I work with so many different people in different places every single day. And so it helps me stay relaxed when I recognize and I'm able to tune in, like just showed me and or shared with me, is that ability to go, okay, like when that happens again, I can cleanse my energy field, call in my guides. I can then say, okay, like take a breath, and how much of that is me that I'm picking up on, spirit, and how much is that person, and really getting clarity. And then immediately I go, okay, I can work at this in a different way, because I have that really clear ability to go there and discern it.
Yeah. And I know when I check those things out and I get something like, oh, it's only 10% me, it really helps me just sort of release that emotional turmoil that I'm going through. And, the next step is to just discern with your guidance. Okay, so how do I be of service here? And, I know you handled it and it wasn't really a big deal. So,
But you know what is a big deal? Is that I feel every single day as I'm interacting with people, I can feel what they're feeling. And so in tuning in and recognizing, what's me and what's not me, and being able to do just a real quick technique like this is one way to help me stay relaxed in my job and in my business energy and working with others where they're at.
Yeah. So that all we're talking about is how can I be more fulfilled in my everyday life? And all of a sudden, once, I found that as I've mastered certain areas, as I've kind of, taken a look at them, and as opposed to getting involved in mental gymnastics. Oh, well, how dare he be so, strong with me about that? I just made an honest mistake. And, once you have that, now your energy's going off to confusion, right? So we're all going to have our learning experiences. We're all going to miss a little sensitivity here or there. But over time, the more that I unfold that and become more aware of, that's just a concept, because the truth is you're aligned with those folks. You want to be of service. You want to get it right. And, all you have to do is tune into your feelings like, well, how can we do this better next time? How can I recheck this? Or how can I let them know to let me know sooner? Or, sometimes things just fall through the cracks. Who knows why that person, attracted that opportunity? And there's times where you're just an innocent bystander. I mean, the energy was headed that way and you just happen to be the person that does that. So, that's why it's great to check with your guidance, and then all we're talking about is how do I have more fulfillment? How can my flow in life be a little clearer and easier, as opposed to accepting the almost religious idea that I'm here to suffer and then find ways to suffer. So, true freedom and involvement, really, it comes through service and opportunity and working with each other and having a chance to provide a healing light in those situations versus something that's going to want to do the one-upmanship and the competition and the rush. And
Boy, do I recognize that because
yeah.
what comes to me about that is how years ago, probably not that many years ago, but I would have got maybe defensive within me or felt that pressure within me. And then I would have like maybe spun out a bit. And so recognizing that I can move
Right.
at it in a different way these days because of the fact that I'm more aware of my energy and what I'm dealing with makes such a difference. And I think that's part of why we're really very passionate about sharing, how to make spirituality practical, and that, playing this game of life, there's so many pieces to it. And we're just giving you a snippet of the piece that's for your unseen parts, that spiritual part of you.
Yeah, when you realize that as a soul, you can communicate through those 4 spiritual gifts, is what we refer to them, or 4 types of perception, and then, and that you have spiritual guidance or spiritual helpers, angels, that have mastered those lessons that can help you clarify that along the way. And, it's not like you give up your authority to your spiritual helpers. You don't. In fact, they won't let you. They respect you too much. They respect us too much, but they can help us unfold our sensitivity, help us recognize, get some facts like, oh, that was only 15% me. Okay, well, that's good. And really what that says is you're not going to dwell in who's right and who's wrong for very long.
Yeah.
You're going to feel it. Some of that's always going to be around, because that's part of our programmed environment, But I noticed that when I grow through something spiritually, it's like those experiences just seem to fall away. I just don't notice them as much as I used to, and I start noticing other things.
Yeah, and I notice with the game of life that it gets a lot more fulfilling for myself, and a lot more, I feel more imbalance as I'm moving through it. So I think this is a good
And the
place.
only one who can do it is you. The only one who can do it for me is me.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, let's introduce some folks to their 4 spiritual gifts. We can show you how realistic it is, how accurate you are. And from there, you can get your own answers.
Yeah. So what about any last thing you want to say, Tom, about the game on and being spiritual?
Every game you enjoy is because you understand the rules of the game and you know what you're playing.
Or you have the ability to gain insights on how to play the game.
Yeah, and have the adventure of your lifetime.
So thank you for listening to another episode of Enthusiastically Spiritual. And if you're interested in joining us for one of our upcoming Intuition Now classes, which we offer actually 2 a month, and one of them we offer 2 different time frames for the people down under and the people up here in Europe and America, check out the link below for our link tree, and you can sign up, reserve your seat, and join us. They're a lot of fun, and we enjoy doing them.
Yeah, and you can get started there and decide where you want to go from then on.
Sounds great. So until next week, remember that
life is too short to not be enthusiastic about your unique journey.
To keep the enthusiasm going, please like, subscribe, or comment below. We would love to hear from you. When you gravitate towards trust, life moves with more grace and ease. One way is staying in the now and mastering your inner world, those psychic perceptions that show up through feelings, knowings, hearing, and seeing. If you are ready for more clarity for your direction in life, by honoring your time and trust, check out the link in the show notes for our next Intuition Now Masterclass, where we explore your inner abilities and support you in getting your own answers and start trusting in yourself.